be seated. All right, we have several public hearings tonight on the printed agenda and on the screen. When is our policy? When an agenda item is denoted as a public hearing, persons attending shall be permitted to address the Board of Aldermen regarding the item under consideration, those speaking in favor speaking first, and those against speaking second. Proponents and opponents shall each be given totally 20 minutes of time to speak and may choose to allow one speaker to utilize that time or choose to allocate the time amongst different speakers. The mayor shall divide the 20 minutes if the speakers have not agreed on it in advance. All right, so our first public hearing is rezoning, and this rezoning was continued from June 2nd. Stephen Owen, agent for owners Congress Gardens, Inc., Garden Towers Limited Partnership, and FN Prestige Worldwide, LLC. For properties located southwest of the intersection of East Mountain Street and Snowbridge Lane and west of Dudley Products Boulevard, being all of the pins as noted on the agenda and in the report, containing 31.51 plus or minus acres. And this is zoning docket K388A2. We'll begin with a presentation by our Community Development Director, Catherine Garner.
Madam Mayor, we heard from the applicant's realtor today that they wish to continue this case for another 30 days while they continue to work out some environmental concerns with the property seller.
Okay, so that would continue it to the August?
August 4th.
Okay. Do I have a motion to continue this case?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gorham, second by Alderman Savanas. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, the next item is also a rezoning, MOC Kernersville 2 LLC for property located on the northeast corner of Glenview Drive and Rosewater Avenue, zoning docket K654A2. Ms. Garner?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This case was originally rezoned several years ago as part of the Outback and Caribou development. Those are open or under construction between this parcel and Union Cross Road. This one is at the corner of Glenview and Rosewater Avenue. So the petitioner is MOC Kernersville 2 LLC. The current zoning is general business conditional. The requested zoning is also general business conditional. The property is just over 2.5 acres. The applicant has proposed the following specific uses for the site: child daycare center and medical and surgical offices. So the purpose of this rezoning, without changing the zoning district, is to update the list of uses that would be allowed and to adopt a new site plan. So this would replace the hotel or motel site plan that was previously approved with that Outback and Caribou several years ago in 2023. As I mentioned, this property is on the corner of Glenview and Rosewater, and you can see the zoning in the area in the map on the right side of the screen. General business conditional on both sides of Rosewater. Highway business special in the Winston-Salem jurisdiction is across Union Cross, and then there's commercial on the north side of I-40 as well. Immediately adjacent in Kernersville is RM8, that's the Glenview townhomes, and then there is some Forsyth County ag on the other side of Glenview where it is not annexed into Kernersville. This is the site plan that has been submitted with this rezoning. It shows two buildings, a 7,000 square foot building to be used for medical and surgical offices, and a 12,595 square foot building to be utilized as a child daycare center on the north side. So that would be plan right. All access drives are located on Rosewater Drive or Rosewater Avenue. The pedestrian connection along Glenview Drive would connect to the neighboring residential development, so just continuing the sidewalk along Glenview Drive. And then between the two buildings, there would be a shared stormwater control measure. This is a more close-up look at the medical office and the location of that stormwater control measure, kind of wrapping around the building there at the corner. And then the Lightbridge Academy Child Daycare Center on the right side of this parcel, showing the building and the parking and the play area. These were the building elevations that were submitted for both buildings, showing the medical office and the child daycare center. The land use plan for this area is business center. And the requested uses and proposed elevations meet the intention of the land use plan designated as business center by providing institutional and office employment opportunities, which restrict lighting and provide screening to reduce adverse effects on neighboring properties. The proposed development will utilize the high-density development option. This is development that has added greater than 24% built-upon area and therefore must install engineered stormwater control measures. The applicant has also applied for the special intensive development allocation, and a detailed stormwater management plan will be required by the town's watershed and stormwater regulations. Staff and Planning Board recommend to amend the Unified Development Ordinance of the town by rezoning the property in case K654A2 from general business conditional to general business conditional, the said rezoning being consistent with the comprehensive plan and both reasonable and in the public interest because of the following. The proposal is consistent with the land use plan designation. The proposal is consistent with the goals and objectives of the I-40 Union Cross Interchange Southeast Quadrant Small Area Plan. And the proposal proposes adoption of elevations that ensure high-quality development that will not cause adverse impacts on neighboring properties. Staff and Planning Board also recommend approval of the site plan and conditions as presented in the staff report. This was presented at the June Planning Board meeting, and all members present voted in favor. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions by the board at this time? All right, this is a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open. I have Amanda Hodier signed up to speak. Ms. Hodier.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nice to see you, members of the board. Amanda Hodier, 804 Green Valley Road, Suite 200 in Greensboro. I'm here tonight on behalf of the petitioner and property owner. I have with me tonight Mr. Alex Budenberg. He's with Claycon Development. They are the preferred developer for the Lightbridge Academy, which is the proposed end user for the daycare facility here. So he's here due to his involvement with the site plans before you, in case you have any technical questions about those. As you've heard from Ms. Garner, we can go to the next slide, please. You see our subject property here is the red, excuse me, the red outlined single parcel. It is some of you may recall, this is coming back as a revision to a previously approved one-step site plan zoning that was done in November of 2023. This request tonight, however, is limited to just that rear parcel, as Ms. Garner described. So if we could go to the next slide, please. A little bit more on the nature of the request. We're not asking to change the district. It's still general business conditional, GBC. We're just re-specifying the use, changing that condition out from hotel motel to the medical office and daycare child care center, as you've heard described. So the hotel motel site plan would completely go away and be replaced by what we're going to talk about this evening if this were to be approved. It's on 2.59 acres. You just saw the parcel. Again, this is a revision to that November 2023 approved rezoning and site plan of the larger development that included the parcels fronting on Union Cross Road, the replacement of the use, as you can see. If we could go to the next slide, please. Looking at the zoning pattern, Ms. Garner did a great job of talking about all this, so we don't need to review it too much. I'll just again highlight and point out that color and designation you're seeing on the map, the GBC, is not changing. So this will look exactly the same even if this item is approved this evening. It is the detail about what goes on that red outlined parcel that we're here to talk about. If we could go to the next slide, please. Looking more broadly at the location and the locational factors, just as I talked about back in November, This request really is still driven by this locational context. We, of course, are just south of the I-40 interstate, so of course a lot of east-west travel, but also Union Cross Road, of course, being a major thoroughfare corridor serving folks coming in and out of Kernersville, coming both to town to work, to shop, to go to school, to play. Lots of folks live in the area. We'll talk about the comp plan in a moment, designating this area as business center. So really what all that means together and comprehensively is that this is a thriving, hustling, bustling area. And this development as a whole, being general business, has a number of uses that seek to serve and enhance that activity, and all of the people already using this area and already coming here to do the things we've talked about. So we would submit to you that this use, this substitution use, better and more appropriately serves that activity hub and that the individuals and users already in the area. If we could go to the next slide, please. So just as a reminder, this is the existing approved site plan as it sits today. Again, this request is a substitution, a revision, so this is not about necessarily a zoning change, it's about a specific use change. So a little bit more nuanced. This isn't a greenfield site or raw land, as we sometimes call it. It is entitled, it does have a use that can be developed, and it is as you see it here, which was approved back in November of 23. If we could go to the next slide, please. This again is just showing that the currently approved use dropped in to the context of the aerial. And we're just talking about the rear. Thanks, sorry. We can keep going. This is the approved elevation of the current existing use. This is that hotel motel. So you can see, as you saw on the site plan in 2D, it is one bigger building. It's 4 stories with the parapets. It does have, of course, the nice articulation and architectural treatment as we worked through last time, but it is certainly just a different form and feel of a building for that single use of a hotel motel. Just to kind of contextualize and remind us of what can happen today. So if we go to the next slide, this is showing, because again, this was part of a larger approved development, all of the road improvements and the enhancements to the transportation infrastructure have been done. So you're not seeing and hearing those conditions tonight because they were part of the case in November. They've all been completed and they're there ready and able to serve this new proposed use as they were required for their previously approved use. So you can see here that they are in fact installed and ready. Thank you. We can keep going. Next slide. So getting to what we're proposing tonight, this is the 2 sites, the 2 different uses, as you've heard from Ms. Garner. The larger one, further interior, is the proposed child care daycare center. The more square-shaped one on the end is the proposed medical office space. So you can see a couple of big distinguishing factors here. We have 2 buildings instead of 1. It gives it a nice, I think, it's more compatible with the surrounding pattern of more smaller buildings instead of the one larger monolithic building. You see that we've got less footprint, less square footage, less parking and impervious surface. We're able to share that stormwater facility there and make an efficient use of the site. So you can see it fits, it contextualizes a little bit better with the neighborhood residential to the back without having that large monolithic structure right up against the townhomes. If we can keep going, that also carries over, that compatibility improvement also carries over to the elevations. You remember the hotel motel we just looked at? These are the proposed elevations for the child care center. You can see it's 1 story. It has several nice architectural details with the gabled roof, the articulation and fenestration details with the pushed out overhangs for the drop-off area. It's got the cupola on the roof. It's got the nice fenestration and pillars, the mix of building materials and masonry to really give it a nice elevated look that's commensurate with the intersection and the high quality that was approved back in November of 23. And again, it is 1 story and I think fits better architecturally and compatibility-wise with the nearby residential. Moving to the second building, which is the medical office. Again, 1 story. Again, a nice use of masonry, the pillaring, the fenestration with the windows, the high-lows on the elevation change, and again, just a smaller building. So submitting to you that this is a better fit, perhaps a less intense juxtaposition of architectural formats here than the hotel motel use was. If we could go to the next slide, please. Your underlying regulatory landscape, of course, is still here and strong, just as it was in November. You've got the dimensional standards for the general business district all remain in place. That's your setbacks. That's your minimum lot sizes, impervious surface regulations as affected by that special intensity allocation. You've got use-specific standards for a child care center. That's those specific requirements that follow certain uses in your ordinance. So those are in play here. That's part of what's been reviewed by your development review committee, and the site plan in front of you that Alex and his team have worked on does meet those requirements. We've been through DRC to ensure that. Required stormwater control measures, again, as has been checked and reviewed by Chris Jensen as part of that DRC process. Required street yards and perimeter buffers all in place, just as they were before, will also have to happen here and are reflected on the site plans. You've got the added condition for the lighting control that Ms. Garner described, and the applicant happily accepts that. And the elevation commitment for the aesthetic controls, which I've described, I do think give better architectural harmoniousness and compatibility with the area. Looking at the next slide, our land use plan consistency, this is business center designation. So of course, that looks to provide office and institutional uses, which is exactly what this is, one office and one institutional user. It also looks for site plan compatibility that minimizes impacts to neighboring residential. So we're doing that here with the screening, the better architectural compatibility, the condition for the lighting that we've mentioned. We also have the unified design scheme, which is a big part of business center. I'll also point out that having a medical office and a child care center within a business center area is great for employers and employees, right? Those are things that employees need as part of their daily work, a place to have your kids nearby in daycare while you're at work, a place to run to the office if you need medical care during the workday that doesn't require you to take the whole day off. So perfect uses to fit into that business use scheme. And of course, the I-40 Union Cross Interchange Southeast Quadrant Small Area Plan is also in play here. And as Ms. Garner mentioned, we're also consistent with that plan. A couple of points here that Ms. Garner has already emphasized. So land use plan consistency. Which brings us to our summary, why this is reasonable and in the public interest. We are consistent with both aspects, your small area plan and your business use center of your comprehensive planning. The request is very limited in scope and applicability. We're not changing the zoning district. We're just changing out one use for the other with all that other regulatory landscape in place as we've reviewed. The site plan commitment still provides you, the town, the neighbors, the staff with that full predictability and full assurance of all those development requirements being met. The elevations you've seen provide you with the continued commitment to high architectural standards and that better compatibility. And of course, all of this has been DRC reviewed and approved. One last slide. We did, of course, go through our public information process. We mailed out 23 letters to all the owners within 200 feet back in December of 25. Of course, also had the sign posted on the property. Held a meeting. We did not have anyone attend that meeting. We also did not have any emails or phone calls in response to that letter that went out. As I've checked with staff previously, I understand that they have not had inquiries either, but I'll let Ms. Garner correct me on that if that's changed. We did have unanimous approval at planning board, and we did not have any speakers in opposition. We had a few folks who were curious, and we spoke with outside and mentioned that they were happier with this proposal than the last one. Don't know if I see them tonight, but that was what they told us back at planning board. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. All right, is there any discussion, questions for Ms. Hodiern or Ms. Garner? Or do I have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the motion that was placed before us tonight in regards to those following land use plans, designations, and the proposals that were presented. That we go ahead and approve those tonight as written.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the rezoning, site plan, and conditions as recommended by staff. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gorham, second by Alderman Savanas. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you, Amanda. When do they plan to begin construction? Okay, so the end of this year, the beginning of next year. Thank you. Appreciate you attending to answer the specific questions. Thank you. From Greenville, South Carolina, thank you. Thank you. All right. We've got item C is a text amendment. I do have one person signed up to speak on that, but I think we've got maybe a presentation first. So Curtis, looks like we've got 3 text amendments. Are you presenting, or is Catherine? Catherine, are you presenting all 3 together? Separately? Okay. Let's begin with item D then, or item C. I rolled too far ahead. That's what happens when my monitor that matches the screen is burned out. I have to roll up and down the agenda. All right, so we are on item C, public hearing text amendment, KT 283. Ms. Garner?
Madam Mayor, our first of 3 text amendments tonight are changes to Article 6 of the UDO. So there are 3 specific changes that are proposed with this particular text amendment to Article 6. The first change is to modify the language of UDO Article 6, Section 6.3.1.b.4 regarding neighborhood meetings. Change number 2 would be to eliminate UDO Article 6, Section 6.3.1.h.1 regarding limits on resubmittals in response to a change in the North Carolina General Statutes. And change number 3 is to modify the language of UDO Article 6, Section 6.4.4.b.1 regarding timeframes for submittals of applications for appeals and interpretations. The first change that I mentioned would be a clarification to the process for neighborhood meetings before map and text amendments. So this clarifies when the postmark date for neighborhood meeting letters must be put in the mail. There's been some confusion about when and how do we count 10 days prior to the neighborhood meetings. We want to make sure that we clarify that. And we have added the language that follows the state statute standard for timeframe. So notice of meeting shall be sent by first-class mail to all property owners within a 200-foot radius of the subject parcels. Mailed notice shall be postmarked at least 10, but no more than 25 days before the hearing. This calculation does not include the day of the meeting. The second change is to eliminate 6.3.1.h.1 to be in compliance with the new state law. So the subpoint 2 will now just become 6.3.1h. So this prevents, the state law prohibits us from requiring applicants to have a cooling off period after a rezoning is denied, so they could turn around and submit the next day, but that was a change in the general statutes. And then change number 3 is a change to the submittal process for appeals and interpretations. This would bring all submittal requirements for any type of quasi-judicial case to follow the same adopted calendar, and this brings consistency across all processes. Special use permits had one process, and appeals and interpretations had a different process, and we want all of them to match, which will be even more important with the change to Planning Board and Board of Adjustment. So this would just have all of quasi-judicial cases following the same submittal process. This was heard at the June Planning Board meeting. There was a lot of discussion based on the public comment about increasing the radius of a mailed notice for neighborhood meetings. And the planning board decided after much deliberation that they wanted staff to research the mailing radius requirements of the UDO and report back within 90 days. They wanted to stick with what was on the docket rather than amending and making other changes to other parts of that, of the proposal at the June meeting. So state law's minimum for notice is just adjacent parcels, including those over the road, over railroads, et cetera. Our standard is 200 feet, which we have kept for neighborhood meetings and then for the required legal notice that the clerk sends. So that is something that they were intrigued by and wanted to know more about, but did not want to make a change at the June meeting. So with what has been proposed, all members present at the June meeting voted in favor of the text amendment as presented. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. This is a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open. I do have Ann Simmons Johnson signed up to speak. Ms. Johnson?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem.
Hold on just a second. I'm not sure if your microphone is on. Is it green at the base?
Yes.
It is? Okay. Maybe hold it a little closer to you.
Can you?
Yeah, that's way better.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm here representing, my name is Ann Johnson, and I'm here representing the concerned citizens of the Arboretum community. The concerned citizens of the Arboretum subdivision in Kernersville, North Carolina would like to make application for a formal appeal to modify the UDO text amendment KT 283, change number 1 under agenda item line 1C. I have with me a petition of 30 signatures, and I think each one of you may have gotten the packet for that. In addition to what has been presented tonight by Ms. Garner, we would also like to request that notices of the public, of the neighborhood meeting be sent to every homeowner in a townhome community. And I have a presentation available for you. The concerned citizens of the Arboretum are members of townhome subdivision. And every homeowner in that division would like to be notified of the neighborhood meeting so that they can engage. Next slide, please. This is a picture of our community. Whether buying, selling, or building, zoning or rezoning community engagement helps keep our town thriving and prosperous. Next slide, please. This is an aerial view of our property adjacent to commercial properties around us. We're connected to those properties, and all 195 units in the Arboretum belong to a homeowners association. And together we have a private contract with the areas around us. We're connected by stormwater runoff, the wet pond, and private roads. And this is another reason why every homeowner in that community should have a notice to attend the public, attend the neighborhood meeting. I'm sorry, you have to forgive me. I'm having a little bit of issues going on. But next slide, please. This is another map showing how the water flows from that property into our property and ends up in the retention pond. And you'll see the highlighted area in yellow. That's all of that property that was in that aerial view, including the arboretum. So we're all connected, and there's no way to break that connection. Like I said, there is, we're connected, and we're connected through a private agreement that's on file at the Forsyth County Register of Deeds office. Next slide, please. In the past, this is how the rezoning signs appear on that property when there's a concern. Not everybody in the arboretum sees that sign and knows what those signs mean. And with the notice of going out to each member for a neighborhood meeting, they will kind of get an idea. They will be able to determine if they can attend. If they can't, maybe they can send somebody in their place. But community engagement is the key. And we're asking the board to consider that when making their decision. Next slide, please. It's important to fix what is broken. And what is broken is not everybody knows about the neighborhood meetings. And if everybody is sent a notice of those meetings from the applicant, then they have an opportunity to get together and come to the meeting. Thank you for your consideration in this matter. And if you have any questions about the slide or the petition, I'll be available to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. You had signed up to speak in favor. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of the text amendment? Anyone else here to speak in favor of the text amendment? All right, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the text amendment? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the text amendment for KT 283? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Ms. Garner or Mr. Swisher, do you have any comments about the range of the notice period and how that would apply throughout the town?
Other than what Ms. Garner said, I mean, currently we are required to do it just to adjoining property owners. In most cases, the HOA is notified at that point. The HOA is kind of, they have a management group, would notify the folks in the community, but that doesn't always happen. Mr. Hooker and myself met with individuals in regards to this. I think there is at your desk a proposal that would, if adopted by the board, would require that if an adjacent neighborhood has common area, this property that's owned by an HOA, then everyone in that community would be notified. I think at that point, that would address their concerns about notification to everyone in that community. I don't think you can accomplish that really if you didn't want to do it that way, but wanted to set, instead of a 200-foot radius, set 300 or 400 foot. I mean, in some of these communities, you would have to go out 500, 600, 700 feet, at which point anything that's adopted applies across town. So, at that point, your notifications are 700 feet out, which could really become troublesome in some areas as far as notification and everything that's required. So I think if the board wants to adopt something to address that concern, the language you have before you will do that.
And by language we have in front of us, is that an alternate to what's posted online?
It's what Ms. Garner covered. The addition is the language that's highlighted in yellow. We didn't post it online because we posted what the planning board adopted. I think if someone wants to add this language to it, it would be a good idea to read what's in it so that someone, the audience would know.
Okay, so it would be a modification of Section 1, Article 6, Section 6.3, B6,
Correct.
which as it's posted online reads, if a mobile home park falls within the required radius, each tenant of the park shall be notified of the meeting. So you would add, if an adjacent neighborhood has common area property that is owned or maintained by an HOA or a POA, all property owners within the adjacent neighborhoods must be notified.
Correct.
Okay, does staff recommend that change?
I think there are pros and cons. One of the things that Planning Board wrestled with was changing the neighborhood meeting requirements, because right now the neighborhood meeting requirements and the legal notice requirements are the same. So everybody who gets a neighborhood meeting letter is going to get a letter from us saying, we're having a public hearing on this day at this time. If this is changed, then, and the legal notice requirements that we follow when we're sending our letters are not changed, then it will be two sets of people who are getting letters. And the planning board wanted to take more time to study that, both in terms of the impact of time to prepare letters and see what other communities are doing, especially if they require neighborhood meetings. Neighborhood meetings are not required by state statute, but many communities do them so that citizens can be engaged from the outset. Ms. Johnson showed a picture of some signs. Those are our legal signs. Those are not the neighborhood meeting signs, but neighborhood meeting signs are required of the developer. But they don't look like our signs. One, so people can distinguish between a neighborhood meeting sign and the official government notice of public hearing. So I think Planning Board ultimately decided that they wanted to take some time to evaluate what should be the best course of action and come back to it, rather than just responding to one and then ultimately creating confusion down the line if you get notice of a neighborhood meeting, because this would significantly expand the requirements for notice of a neighborhood meeting on a developer. But then if they don't get a follow-up letter in the mail about the public hearing, then that could also be confusing to citizens as well. Hopefully, if they're interested in when they receive the neighborhood meeting letter, then they will stay engaged through the process. They'll avail themselves of our online information, both in terms of the posted agenda, our happenings in Kernersville map, and the other means that we have things posted in the paper and other places. But if they don't, then they could potentially miss that second notice of public hearing for Planning Board and Board of Aldermen. So that's some of staff's concerns at this time, and a little bit more context in why the Planning Board spent a lot of time debating it and ultimately decided to wait for more information.
And I would second what Ms. Garner said. I think if you change one, you probably would need to change both of them. I mean, I don't think you would want the neighborhood meeting being one notice and then the legal notice sent out by the town being something different. But I do think it probably does warrant some more study of that situation to see which method will notify the most number of homeowners in an area, because there may be another way to do that notifies more folks, because this just applies, it's like Alderman Sabanis and I were talking, this just applies to an HOA. So if it's an area that doesn't have an HOA, then you're still not going to notify everyone in that neighborhood. So take, for instance, my neighborhood. If there's a rezoning up on Mountain Street, it may just catch the front part of my neighborhood and still not everyone in the neighborhood. The problem is you're never going to get everyone in the neighborhood anyway, unless you just go 2,000 feet or whatever it may be. And at some point, there are some issues in going out so far in notifications. But I would agree with Ms. Garner. I think probably the board has this language. I think that's something the board can consider and evaluate over the next month or two while the planning board and planning staff also looks at some different options to take back to the planning board and then ultimately bring it back to this board. I will tell you that when we met with individuals, one concern they had, and it was very justified, was the signs that you saw in the slide presentation. The way they're posted, they aren't double-sided, so you can't see those signs driving down the road. They're just facing the road, which means you have to turn and look at the sign. We have ordered some more signs. We've ordered, I think, 25 more signs so that all of our signs now can be double-sided. So you can see those driving down the road without having to turn and look at it. So that will help. I do agree with what they brought up that day. It makes it very difficult sometimes where we have those posted. In this particular situation at the Arboretum, they were posted when you come up out of the Arboretum onto like a service road. So not a lot of folks will see that. And then as they were going down North Main Street, the sign was just one way on North Main. You couldn't see it traveling both ways unless you looked. So we have taken some steps to help that situation. But I do think it would probably adopt what's before the board tonight and then have this language and possibly come up with some other alternatives for the board to consider in September, probably, October.
So at this point in time, you're not recommending adding that highlighted language to item 6?
I would not tonight. I agree with Ms. Garner. I think with the planning board, and she and I didn't get to talk about it a whole lot for tonight, with the planning board asking staff to evaluate it as well, to possibly look at some of the other alternatives. I think those go back to the planning board, see what they come up with in addition to this language that you have before you. And then it can go to the planning board in either August or September and come back to this board in October to look at those options. And it would be the same. You would just do a text amendment and add it somewhere probably in 6.3.1 would be my.
Curtis, can we just table this for right now until we get the information that the planning board is seeking before we make a decision on this?
I wouldn't recommend tabling the suggested changes tonight because we need to go ahead and get those in place. One of them is required by state law we just passed.
Okay.
And the other one is to help clarify the issue of really what is 10 days. We've had some folks that aren't able to calculate what 10 days really is, when it starts, when it ends. So I would recommend going ahead and adopting the 3 that are recommended, and then we'll come back to you with some other language regarding the neighborhood meeting.
Okay, do we do that individually? We can do it all at the same time? The 3 that's been recommended?
I think you can adopt all of the text amendments recommended in KT-283 as a group. Is that what y'all do?
Well, I have a question before we end up having any motions. So with the required neighborhood meeting part of the UDO, where we have that mobile home park bit, do we have that in the legal notice bit too?
No, that is not in the legal notice. That came up out of just after the Holt experiential rezoning, also on North Main Street, which also backs up to 2 large mobile home communities. And Planning Board felt that because many, if not all, of the residents in those neighborhoods own their home, but they don't own the land underneath it, they would never show up on the GIS for when we calculate the radius. It flags it does the mathematical calculation, and it flags all the properties that fit within that radius. So you're not depending on my math skills, it just does it. But if they don't own the property, then it is going to who owns the land underneath it, which is often corporations that are often out of state. And so the planning board felt that because there was no way in the tax records to show like the mobile home as a parcel, unlike a townhome, which is a parcel and will be flagged in that calculation, that those should be included because there was probably no other way that they would receive notice unless they happened to see the sign, because their neighbor probably wouldn't get it either. So that was the impetus for adding that. So trying to strike a balance between notifying everybody and then or tailoring it so low that nobody gets notice is that fine balance.
So the mobile home parks, they get the neighborhood notice and not the legal notice.
Correct. The landowner gets the legal notice and the neighborhood meeting notice, and then the mobile home community residents get the neighborhood meeting notice.
And that might be something to look at as well when we're studying the HOAs and how that works, is to add that to the actual notice from the town.
Because I think transparency is always a good thing, getting as many people notified as possible, but I also don't want it to be an undue hardship or anything like that, so.
Yeah, and again, I don't think you want the neighborhood meeting notice going to one set of people and the legal notice, them not getting the legal notice from the town either, so.
But we're already experiencing that with the mobile home park
Yeah.
residents.
Correct, and I think that's something that we look at changing with the mobile home park when we bring back in the alternatives for the HOA if the board chooses to go that route.
Would you have the same thing happen if you have an all-rental community, like on Old Winston Road, and next to a proposed rezoning for apartments across from Lowe's Foods?
I think this is all the difficulty and the nuance of how do you set the standards of how much notice is too much notice, such that you get notice going to folks who live so far away that they're like, well, this doesn't apply to me. But then how do you get it to all the people who may be impacted but are not property owners and are not going to show up in a parcel search? I think that's why we've required signs for both. Signs are required by state law for our public hearings, but for neighborhood meetings, we added the requirement for a sign so that somebody who didn't get it or may have just been outside of that bubble, whether or not they're a property owner, could see it and have the opportunity to know about it. And then for all of the legal hearings, we post those online on our happenings map so that people can see what's tracking and when it's going forward. Neighborhood meetings often happen without us even knowing it. We just get the copy of the meeting report with their application. So we couldn't post those online because we're often not aware of when the applicant is choosing to do that.
And with the rental units, like even the ones on Hopkins Road, there's no way to know who the tenant is. I mean, with mobile homes, parks, and condominium associations, townhome associations, those units are owned. So you can go online and figure out who the owner is. With rental communities, there's no way. It's the same as apartments. We don't notify everyone in an apartment complex because we don't have any way of knowing who that is. So we notify the owner of an apartment complex. It's on them to let the folks that live in those units know. We would do the same thing on Old Winston Road. We would notify the owner of that complex, and then they would notify their tenants.
So for KT 283, so change one is something that staff has noticed as a concern because there's an issue as Mr. Swisher has explained, the ability of certain individuals to count to 10. Unfortunately. All right. So item 2 is required for state law compliance. And change 3 is another for clarity and consistency that staff has noted as an operational change. And so at our next meeting in August, we could amend this UDO provision subsequently to address the notice and at the September meeting. So at a future meeting, there's no waiting period for us, is what I was trying to say. There's no waiting period. We could do it next week if we had a special meeting, if we were ready to.
Correct. Yeah,
But it's going to take a certain amount of time to research this particular one, so we're expecting that to be September, but it could be a little bit longer.
Yes, ma'am. It just
took
depends.
time.
I mean, I think the staff will have a recommendation probably to the planning board at either August or September, and then it come back to you all.
Okay. All right, so I think that answers the concern. We can amend it a second time.
So what are we actually going to be voting on tonight?
Whatever
If
we
you choose to
decide
adopt it, you can make a motion to approve the amendments in K2 283 as recommended by staff and approved by the planning board, and then ask that we bring one back regarding notice to homeowners. The meeting notice, neighborhood meeting notice, and the legal notice sent to homeowners.
You know, that's about clear as mud to me, right?
Well,
I
or
would make
we-
it simple, JR. You can just make a motion to approve K2 283
Okay,
as recommended by staff and approved by the
Okay.
planning board.
okay.
And then we know to bring the rest of it back to you.
or
do that.
we can approve it with this modification
Correct.
that's highlighted to handle the concern of the neighborhood that presented Ms. Johnson's concerns. And then in September, we could change this a different way if we wanted to, or we could just wait and not add this.
So what problems do we have if we don't approve the one that's required by the state? Do we put ourselves in jeopardy by not approving it right now?
Yeah, you're out of compliance with state.
Oh, we don't do that then.
Yeah,
mean,
I think the question mainly, JR, or Alderman Gorham, is whether or not we want to add the addendum of the highlighted portion versus all the other changes as presented.
That's correct. I mean, and my recommendation would be, so that you probably get a better alternative, is to not add the highlighted portion tonight, because you don't want to add it and then come back and change it. I mean, you want to add the best one. It's not really going to have an impact between now and October anyway, because I don't know that there's any cases coming in that this highlighted portion would probably come into play. I don't think we have any coming in that involves an HOA, do we?
Not that would affect the Arboretum neighborhood. Nothing's been submitted at this time. So
Yeah.
there are other neighborhoods that would be impacted by, or other rezoning applications that would be impacted by this, or would be, have their neighborhood meeting would have just been completed prior to this change. Because we have applications tracking in all the time, but there's nothing that I have seen that is trending to be submitted in the next few months that would affect the Arboretum neighborhood like in their immediate adjacent vicinity.
And if it's one that's already been submitted and they've already had their neighborhood meeting, we're not going to go back and make them redo the neighborhood meeting. So you might have one case, maybe two, that this would come into play, but it's not going to be enough, in my opinion, to adopt it and then go back and change it. So that's up to the board.
I worry that it'll get lost in the shuffle, and I want it to happen sooner rather than later. And I mean, I know that your staff are swamped with things, but it would be great if the planning board could hear this in August, so after they do their due, it would come before us. I don't want us to be waiting until October or November.
We have requested 90 days because we are trying to wrap up the comprehensive plan, which is going to planning board in August. So that way, and then we had several cases that we thought were going to be on the July planning board agenda, but now have moved to August. So we moved the comp plan to try to avoid the rezonings, and then all the rezonings followed the comp plan. So we do have a little bit of a workload on the rezoning front, but we would make sure that it's not lost in the shuffle. I'm the one that does text amendments, and I try not to do the rezonings and leave those for others.
Make the motion?
Should it be two separate motions then? The one approving all, if we wanted to approve all of this stuff and then do a separate one for,
You can do it all as one, make a motion to approve it and also to bring back the language regarding neighborhood meetings and legal notices by October.
okay. So I move to approve the ordinance as presented in the staff report, and for the language for UDO Article 6, Section 6.3.1.b.6 to come back before the board on the first October meeting.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Alderman Savannah, second by Alderman Pegram. All in favor? It's unanimous. Try and do this the best amendment possible. Ms. Johnson, thank you for your presentation. All righty. So that brings us to item D, which is more text amendments. This is to Article 3 of the UDO relating to on-street parking within the T&D zoning district, docket KT 284. Ms. Garner.
Madam Mayor, our next text amendment is a proposed text amendment to provide clarity around when on-street parking is allowed in developments zoned traditional neighborhood design or development. So that is our Weldon community currently, but this would be an available option for any future projects that are zoned or rezoned for T&D development. On-street parking has been happening somewhat on an informal basis at Weldon, and we want to provide clarity around, especially in the commercial areas, when on-street parking is allowed and how it can count towards off-street parking. Staff reached out to communities across the state to inquire whether other zoning ordinances allow on-street parking to count in lieu of off-street parking requirements set by the uses on the property. For example, a government office requires 1 parking space per 300 square feet gross floor area in our ordinance. So that, depending on how big the building is, determines how many spaces that you need. 7 municipalities responded with references to their ordinances. Several had recently changed some of their ordinances in certain areas of their town to allow for on-street parking to count for off-street parking requirements. These ordinances served as the basis for creating language in this text amendment. So we have proposed to add a new section, subsection H in 3.9B2. 3.9.2.B2, titled Alternative Parking. So on-street parking spaces may be counted towards the off-street parking requirements of Table 5.2, which is where it sets the number of spaces per use type, for commercial and multifamily uses subject to the following standards. On-street and off-street parking must be calculated and shown on all final development plans and civil construction plans to verify that parking minimums are met. And the alternative parking approval shall be based on the following standards. 1, on-street parking must be accounted for in the roadway cross-section on the street frontages where on-street parking is to be utilized in lieu of the provision of additional off-street parking spaces. Number 2, layout and spacing of the on-street parking shall follow all applicable town ordinances in addition to the dimensional requirements established in the UDO. Number 3, the on-street parking spaces shall be permanently marked following MUTCD standards. It is the developer's responsibility to install the on-street parking spaces prior to the issuance of any certificate of occupancy. Number 4, only those spaces directly adjacent to the parcel to be developed may be counted toward the total off-street parking requirements per Table 5.2. If a parking space is adjacent to more than one parcel, at least 50% of the length must be abutting the parcel to be counted toward the off-street parking requirements of the uses on the parcel. Parking spaces shall not be counted for more than one parcel and may not be located across the street. 5, each on-street parking space shall be counted as one space. The cumulative total of on-street and off-street parking spaces must meet or exceed the minimum parking requirements of the use or uses on the parcel per Table 5.2. No additional reductions shall be given for utilizing on-street parking. However, the parking alternatives and incentives of Section 5.2.5 may be utilized. Number 6, spaces shall be available to the public 24 hours a day. And 7, on-street parking may not be utilized in lieu of off-street parking for single-family detached and attached dwellings. So it's long and the print is a little small, so that's why I wanted to read it verbatim. So with number 1 and number 7, those are, we're hearing a lot about how difficult it is to get around on-street parking, especially in neighborhoods with our garbage trucks, and there's concerns for fire access. So we wanted to make sure that with item number 1, there's room on the road for everybody, both the the people who are still driving and the people who are parked, because we want to make sure that everybody can get through. With number 7, that's where we're hearing the most complaints, and we are doing the trash pickup. So we want to make sure that the required off-street spaces are still provided. You can still park on the street, but it won't be in lieu of a driveway or any sort of other off-street parking in the residential zones. For number 2, that's about the layout and the spacing of the on-street parking. So this would make sure that it's, there's the appropriate distance at the intersection so people can still see stop signs, but also the spaces are of an appropriate size for an on-street parking space, so you can parallel park in and out of them. Number 3 would require them to be painted and put in before the certificate of occupancy is issued. That's when people are going to want to start parking in them or potentially utilizing them. And we want them to be painted so that way everybody is parking in the space rather than that like awkward, like some are too close and some are too far away, and then you're losing space on the curb as viable parking spaces. Number 5 or 4 kind of deals with if you're parking along a road frontage that has multiple parcels, who gets to claim which space. If the parking space is at least 50% along one parcel, it counts towards that parcel's parking. And number 5 is about there are no parking reductions for using on-street parking, but the developer could still avail himself or herself of the alternatives and incentives like shared parking, reductions for bicycle parking that are available to everyone in our ordinance already. So that is kind of the why behind all of those standards. This was presented at the June Planning Board meeting, and Planning Board and staff recommend approval of the ordinance as presented, with all members present voting in favor. There is one Planning Board member who lives in Weldon and was very vocal in his support of this proposal at that meeting. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Garner. This is a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open. I have signed up to speak Milt Rhodes. Welcome, Milt.
Thank you. Milt Rhodes, 1134 Paris Street, Greensboro, North Carolina, for Walden Village. And I just wanted to take a couple of minutes tonight and say the work that you're doing, especially tonight with the multiple text amendments, is just solid work. These ordinances and plans, these are living, breathing documents that require constant updates, constant evolution, and I'm appreciative of your very capable staff of working through this hard work, because it's nuts and bolts and details, and you want to get it right. When we started Weldon going on 2013, how many years ago? It's 13 years ago. We started with this. It was pretty loosey-goosey, and we've all been looking for clarity around a lot of things, and gaining clarity on-street parking and how it's used is going to be essential for us moving forward as we get more and more into the commercial district. So working with your staff to come up with something that's pretty good. Is it perfect? No, but it's pretty good, and I think it gives us the clarity that we're eager to get to, so we can keep moving along and doing what we set out to do and have been doing. So I just wanted to say thanks for Catherine and her team to work with us on this as we got to a decent solution to work through over the next couple of months as we bring some very exciting projects on board.
Thank you for
I'm
your
here for
comments.
questions too, if you got any questions.
Thank you for your comments, Milt.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else here to speak in favor? Seeing it none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Anyone here to speak in opposition to KT 284? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
On number 4 of this, so would somebody, like if I lived in one of these homes and somebody was parked in what I would deem my on-the-street parking spot, would I be able to get them towed?
This is structured so that the painted parking spaces would only be applicable in the commercial portions of Weldon. So in the single-family areas, whether detached or attached, if there's parking in front of your house, it's just kind of a free-for-all. But this would apply specifically to the commercial areas. There are some apartment buildings that this would be applicable on their road frontage as well. But for the single-family, it's just going to remain the same.
Okay, that makes sense. And then somebody could just, in the commercial areas, just park there for 24 hours straight? Does this have anything to do with like 1 hour parking, 2 hour parking?
No.
Because commercial, okay. I was just curious.
Okay. I move that we adopt this changes to KT 284 as recommended by staff.
Okay, I have a motion.
Second.
I have 2 seconds. All right, I have a motion by Alderman Pegram, second by Alderman Sabanis. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, that brings us to the next text amendment, which is KT 285. This is a text amendment to Article 9 of the UDO related to flood insurance rate maps.
Madam Mayor, our last text amendment tonight is about the flood insurance rate maps, which are important because to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program and in order to best regulate land within flood zones, you have to adopt the state maps. So this update clarifies that the town recognizes the most recently adopted North Carolina flood insurance rate maps. But we also wanted to incorporate language to recognize future amendments to the map rather than having to do new text amendments at each update. We got a scary letter in the mail that was like, if you haven't updated your ordinance by this day, you're being canceled. And we were like, what? So that's when we came up with the idea that we would be adopting the new ones that are going to be dated August 21st, 2026, and any revisions thereto. We also added Forsyth and Guilford counties, as Kernersville now does extend into Guilford County, and there may be flood areas in Guilford that would need to be, this would need to apply to. So we're trying to set ourselves up for success by adopting these current ones that are about to be updated, and then any revisions thereto in the future. This was heard at the June Planning Board meeting. Planning Board and staff recommend approval of the ordinance as presented, and all members present voted in favor.
All right, this is a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Sounds like this might be a good one to approve.
Yeah. Madam Mayor, I'd like to recommend approval of ordinance KT 285 as presented.
Okay, I've got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gorham, second by Alderman Pegram. All in favor? It's unanimous. And let's go ahead and mail those premiums in. Right? All right, how about we take a 10-minute recess? We'll stand in recess.
Works. Turn around, spin around without, it ends up on his head. Yes, he and who? How old is she? 95. Okay, now she's a little older than that. But he goes up, leadership every day, and comes up there and sees his buddies, takes him a nap, grumbles about how cold it is, and it's 85.
Good evening and welcome back to the regular meeting of the Kernersville Board of Aldermen. We are now to the second part of our meeting, the public session, and I do have someone signed up to speak as a speaker from the floor. That is Buddy Nelson. Mr. Nelson, if you could state your name and address for the record as you begin your remarks. And let's make sure your microphone is on. Do you have a green?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect.
Buddy Nelson, 8634 Hall River Road. I've come to talk, I hope everybody's doing well. I came to talk about the 5-story apartment building. They're about to get it done. Patrick, who is the supervisor for 4th and M, showed me the plans. All they've got between my mama's yard and the apartment building is little flowers, little plants. All this other stuff that got amended or passed at Union Cross just a minute ago had lightning where you couldn't get light in your building. Mama's gonna have lights in her bedroom and her porch, every time of the day. I wish they would build a fence. I called Tony Alford about 2 months ago and talked to him about it. He said, well, I'll get back to you in 2 weeks. Hadn't heard a thing. So, they need something besides plants. People can walk right out of the apartment building, right into Mama's backyard, into her garage, whatever they want to do. We need something done. And I'd appreciate it if you did. Y'all can come stand on the porch, sit at Mama's, do whatever you want. Y'all can see what it's going to look like. So I'd appreciate it if y'all did anything. That's all I got to say. So.
Thank you. Mr. Swisher or Ms. Garner?
I don't know right offhand what the street yard and landscape is required. I mean, I haven't seen the plans, but we can look into the plans and make sure that he's planted it per our UDO and whatnot. Now, the lighting, if it's parking lot lighting, it should be directional into his parking lot. But we can check and make sure.
First, they'll have lights. When they're pulling into the parking lot, lights will be right on Mama.
Yeah, is the driveway, does it run around the building there, buddy? Okay. Yeah, we can take a look at it and see. I don't know what we can do other than what our UDO says, but we'll take a look at it and check it out.
Do you know the street address?
Oh, yeah, I know where he's talking about.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure.
Bottom of the hill, you can come see us.
Yep. She's on the corner of English and
Yeah, the last one.
Harmon.
Last on the left.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought it was English. Yeah. So Catherine and I ride out and take a look at it and see.
Okay.
Please let me know what you guys find.
Thank you for coming to speak, Buddy. All right, item B is consideration of approval of non-profit funding agreements from the general fund. Mr. Swisher, I believe this is a follow-up from the budget, as is item C.
Correct. These are all of the nonprofits, the total amount that was in the budget under nonprofit funding. These are the nonprofits that make up that funding. Their request when they came before the Board of Aldermen in February and March and April. So that's what's in there. You have the contracts before you. In the past, we've done it one at a time. You might could do them as item B, item C. If there's not any board member that's on any of these nonprofits, if there is, then we would need to do them individually and recuse. That board member would need to recuse themselves from whichever contract vote that is. Or you can do them one at a time if you choose to. And item C is the nonprofit funding contracts for the funding coming from the occupancy tax. And I think as I covered at the budget meeting, that occupancy tax is restricted in how it's spent. It has to be spent basically for heads on beds, organizations that generate tourism, And so these three organizations, as well as the town, also receive occupancy tax.
Okay, is there anyone who needs to be recused from voting on any of these individual items in item B? Is there anyone who needs to be recused from or excused from voting on any of the items in item C? Okay, how about, Ed, is it okay if we vote on them as a group?
You can do that as long as no member of the board doesn't want a consideration of individual contract.
Okay, so all of these were part of the presentation of the budget, and so it's broken out for the purpose of the individual agreements with the organizations and compliance with the state law about excusing ourselves from a vote if we have a conflict as to that we serve on that board or have a financial interest. Family member may be working at one of those organizations. So do I have a motion to approve the nonprofit funding contracts from the general fund for the organizations listed in item B, which is the Arts Council, Chamber of Commerce Economic Development, Crisis Control, Kernersville Auto Museum, Kernersville Historic Preservation Society, Kernersville Little Theater, Crossroads Playhouse, Next Step Ministries, Salvation Army, Senior Services, and Shepherd Center. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gorham, second by Alderman Sabanis. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, next is item C. These are nonprofit funding contracts from the Occupancy Tax Fund, Chamber of Commerce, Tourism, Kernersville Little League, and Kerner's Folly Foundation. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Got a motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Gorham and a second from Alderman Pegram. All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. These matters are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which event the matter will be removed from the consent agenda. Item A, approval of minutes for the special session. B, approval of minutes for the May 27 meeting. C, approval of minutes for the June 2nd meeting. And D, consideration of a resolution to convey a surplus fire truck to the Piney Grove Fire and Rescue Department. Do I have a motion to approve the, wait a minute. Would anyone in the audience like to see any of these items removed? Seeing none, would any board member like to see any of these items removed? All right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Got a motion by Sarah Sabanis.
Second. Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Gorham. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, that brings us to the town manager's very brief report.
It will be brief. The board approved in the budget 2 new police officer positions to start in January. We have an officer that has been out for quite some time, and we anticipate them being out probably until sometime next year. So Chief and I and Ms. Whitley and I have talked about if the board would approve allowing one of those officers to come in now. The officer that is out is currently not being paid, so it won't be any change in salary. We would just bring that officer in. One of the officers that was scheduled to start in January, we'll hire one now, bring them in, and then in January, instead of hiring 2, we would just hire 1. So we don't anticipate the other officer to be back by January, so it should not be a crossover in salary.
Do we already have candidates ready for this, or is this opening it?
Don't want a good one to go by. So if the board could do that, board so chooses, have a motion to bring one in now as opposed to January.
I mean, I'd like to move both of them up if we find the right people. Given that there's not an immediate candidate,
Yeah, can we?
then we could just go through the hiring process once.
That's certainly up to the board. It would just take a budget amendment probably. I don't know, are you fully staffed other than that one? So it would take a budget amendment. He's fully staffed other than the one.
Well, that's if he had two candidates that would start in a month, right? But you don't. You don't have two candidates that would be starting in a month. You'd have to be hiring for these two candidates.
That's correct.
So,
It would be probably October before that.
It kind of seems like there's you might as well be trying to hire two people as one person, and then a couple months later, one more person, with all the recruiting activities and such.
I'm totally fine with that. I would greatly appreciate it.
It looks like that we've recently sworn in 3 very fine new officers, so very excited to see that. It's important to keep the staffing up and to get good candidates when we can go through our recruitment process and meet someone that meets the high standards for Kernersville.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
I move to start hiring the 2 new police officers immediately opposed to January 2027.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Motion by Alderman Sabanis, second by Alderman Pegram. All in favor? It's unanimous.
And the other item is just an update. We were talking a little bit about on-street parking tonight and amended our text amendment, our UDO. For that, it looks as though we are probably going to be bringing to you another text amendment regarding off-street parking. We have January 1st, the General Assembly passed a bill that now prohibits municipalities and counties from requiring any off-street parking. So you can't have them in residential or commercial. So beginning January 1st, they can build whatever they want to, and there's no minimum requirement for parking spaces. So to give you an idea of what that would be, someone could build in 600 apartments with 1 parking spot. And it's just a free-for-all where you're going to park. So that passed. I'm not sure when it passed. When? Today. So that got passed and got signed today. It's going to be interesting, to say the least, because in the past, as you all know, we've had, based on the square footage or what the use was or whatever it might be, we had a minimum number of parking spaces required. But I don't even know now if you can, Catherine, you might know, but from what I've read, I don't even know that if someone comes in to build a residential subdivision, if we can require them to have a driveway. So you might have a bunch of houses without driveways, which is going to pose a lot of problems for on-street parking. Not sure how that's going to work, but we'll find out in February probably.
So many years ago, or several years ago, depending how you look at it, we reduced the parking requirements for a lot of the downtown. And the net result is the downtown business owners came in and really needed the town to build a parking lot, which we've done. And then even with that, conflict ensued between one business taking more of the parking than would have been anticipated by the square footage of the business, which Mr. Swisher, I have to say, you resolved that remarkably well by creating an agreement where they could use some of the town hall parking lot for their business. So I think that this will likely result in certain conflicts. So it may be very challenging for the for Kernersville.
It is going to be challenging, I have a feeling. The first multifamily project we get in that, like I say, if they have 500 units, and I think now we would probably require 1.5 spaces for each unit. So roughly we would now require 750 spaces. That's a long ways from none. So we don't know. We'll just have to see how it plays out. They said, the folks that they interviewed regarding the bill, and the reasoning behind the bill is they said that market demand would dictate the number of parking spaces and this and that. And while some of that I may believe, I think that it may not be as true as they think. So, just wanted to update you on that. There's another bill that Alderman Sabanis sent me today that has passed the House. It ironically started out earlier in the year as a bill related to towing of vehicles and putting a boot on the tire for parking violations. It just passed. It was a substitute bill that now allows individuals to de-annex their property from municipalities and has nothing to do with towing or booting of cars. I'm not sure how it got from one to the other, but they made that stretch and it passed in the House. It won't make it to the Senate right now because they're adjourned for right now. They'll reconvene in July. End of July. But it's got some strange provisions in it where we think maybe an individual that if they own, a large tract of land, they could come in and the good part is, that they really just throw it back on the municipalities and the counties. If an individual wanted to de-annex or area wanted to de-annex their property from the town, if they had everyone in the area sign a petition to have it on the ballot as a referendum, that's what happens, but the municipality gets to pay to put it on the ballot. So, and then the only people that get to vote on it are the people that live in that area. So it's a very slim chance that it fails if they want it on the ballot to begin with. So there's very few instances, I think, where it would come into play in Kernersville, but again, it started out as a bill about towing and booting of cars, and now it's one about de-annexation. So before it gets voted on, who knows what it will be. But I'll keep you updated on that if there's any movement in that. There's also a bill that has passed the Senate regarding revaluations, when there's a property revaluation, and how municipalities handle the tax rate. If the municipality is looking to set the tax rate above revenue neutral, then we will be required to notify all property owners in town that is the case. And special notice required for that has to be mailed out 14 days in advance and whatnot. It's not difficulty in it. There's some challenges in that, but will be a cost associated with that as well. Mainly for us, we don't have the data set to do that. We would have to go to the county and get that data set. But that bill has passed the Senate. It has not passed the House. My guess is if it gets to the House, it will pass the House. And that will come into effect for us next year because Guilford County will have a revaluation. I don't anticipate that we would go above revenue neutral, but if you go above any, if it's 52 and you go to 52.1, you have to go through the same process. So keep you updated on that as well. A lot of things have happened in Raleigh, and we've been up to date on most of them, but may have missed some of them, and we'll see what it is when it comes down to us and we have to adjust our policies and procedures.
I think it would be good to have some assurances as to what the accepted calculation of revenue neutral is, so that there's not some, we were in a water rate lawsuit at one point in time, so it would be nice to know that somebody couldn't come and challenge or attack our revenue neutral calculation.
There is a method you have to follow. You take the same amount of revenue with a revaluation as what tax rate would generate the same amount of revenue as the previous year, adjusted for growth of the average growth over the previous 3 years. So that's what the rate is to calculate that.
So is there any way to challenge the average growth rate over the past 3 years? Is that a number from the state, from the federal government?
It's the number we receive from the county regarding the tax base. And we just take, so for next year, we would take 2026's tax base, 2027's tax base, and whatever that percentage is what the growth is for that year. We take that over a 3-year period, take the average of it. Anybody could challenge it, but there's not much of a way to, it would hold up. Where we run into a problem with our revenue neutral, and it's why we've in some years went higher than revenue neutral, is when we do Forsyth County, and if we lower our tax rate, say revenue neutral's 50 cents, and we were at 54 or whatever. When we lower that tax rate to 50 cents, that tax rate is then passed on to our residents in Guilford County who have not had a property revaluation. So basically, they just had a 4-cent tax cut. And so we've always calculated in what that would work out to be if we lowered it in Guilford County to 50 cents, how much revenue we will lose. So then we go above revenue neutral, whatever that might be. Last year, I think it worked out to about 1 cent, 1.25 cents. And then we also figure in an average of what we think we'll have in tax refunds. Last year, it was a little bit higher. And it turned out to be that we were pretty close in what we calculated. By law, you're not allowed to calculate that into the revenue neutral rate, but we have in the past because we know it's something that's going to impact us. And for municipalities that are in multiple counties, you have to do that because not every county does a revaluation the same year. So when you lower your tax rate, everybody is getting it, in High Point's in 4 counties. So when they lower the tax rate in High Point, those folks in Davidson County, Randolph County, and Forsyth County, their taxes got lowered. Their property values didn't change because they may have not done a revaluation. You're not allowed to calculate it, but we usually do, just because we know there's a revenue loss there if we don't. But there is a standard method for calculating revenue neutral.
And then if you could touch on how you end up with the tax refunds, because that's really a decision that's not entirely in Kernersville's control.
Yeah, the tax refunds, that's a different beast in itself. There's basically, it's all through the county. Citizens appeal their tax value. They go in and appeal the value of their property. It goes to an assessor. They look at it. They have a formula that they use to calculate the value of your property. They'll look at it and kind of readjust it. They may readjust it and say, okay, we'll lower the value of your property to whatever. At that point, if you're not satisfied with that, you can go to the Board of Adjudication, I believe is what they're called. That's a panel of individuals. Same individual that you went and just talked to, but it's 3 more just like them. So, and then you come in and they may lower it. You have to go in and present evidence as to why it should be lowered. You may have an appraisal. Usually an appraisal is the best way to do it if you can get a certified appraisal. Sometimes they'll lower it, sometimes they won't. We did see a lot of properties go in to appeal their values this past year from 2025. So we had right much in refunds, more than normal in refunds. Craziest one I think I saw, there was a property, it must have been a commercial property. I think it was valued at 4.2 or 4.4 million. It was 4.4 million. It went up to 4.6. They appealed it and they lowered it to 4 million. So they lowered it below what it was to even begin with, which is unusual. But that's a big hit. You're looking at $600,000 tax base. It's a lot of revenue. So, but that we don't have anything to do with it. They send us a printout every month of, hey, this is the refunds that we've processed, the ones that we've granted, and this is what the town's portion of it is.
So we set the budget and the tax rate, and then after all that's adopted, then the tax appeals and the tax refunds can come in. and reduce the amount of taxes that are actually collected that the budget was based on.
Correct.
Well, I guess we'll be entering into an agreement with Forsyth County and Guilford County for mailing out these notices if the state law requires it.
I don't know that they will be willing to do that. If they have to do it for everybody in the county, that's a lot of notices. I have a feeling if we have to do it, we'll probably have to get the data from them and have an outside firm do it. They might do it, but I don't know. Because you have to, that's a lot of extra notices that have to be mailed out, and there's a lot, it's not just sending out a notice that says, hey, you know, we're having a meeting to discuss the tax rate. You have to tell them what the current tax rate is, what they currently pay at that tax rate, what the revenue neutral rate is, what they would pay at the revenue neutral rate, and what the proposed tax rate is, and what they would pay at the proposed tax rate. So it's not as simple as just going into their data set, pulling it up, sending it out. So I don't know if they would be willing to do that. We'll find out. That's certainly who we would contact first.
So then do we need to know their new reappraised value for that letter?
We would know. I mean, the county would know. So we'd already have that, yeah. But it may not pass. I mean, my guess is if it makes it, like I say, right now, nothing's being voted on, but if it makes it to the floor of the House, I think it will pass.
Do you have any other legislative updates or any other items
That's
to
it
report?
right now. They've not done anything in the last couple of days. They've adjourned until the 27th, I think. So I think the one about the parking was the last one that passed and got signed.
All right, matters to be presented by the town attorney.
I don't have a report tonight.
Matters to be presented by the mayor and board of aldermen. Alderman Savanas.
Good news that the Macy Grove Road extension opened last week, so now it is much quicker to get to Food Lion if you're on the north side of town. I really enjoyed 4th of July fireworks. I got a lot of really good feedback in my neighborhood because a lot of us can see them from our roads. And my 2-year-old said, whoa, so that is high praise. I do have a question that's been posed by a couple citizens of, if it's a town-maintained road that they live on and it has no outlet, how can they get signs that say no outlet?
We can send someone out and look at it. Public Services, just shoot me an email with the road.
Okay.
And we'll have someone go out and look at it.
Okay, because there's been a lot of more turnarounds in the northern part of Kernersville because of the extension on some of those dead-end roads. Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Some of the state signs that are in Kernersville are having that problem that I think the state ordered some road signs that the coating was bad, and so at night they look black with the headlights. I noticed that on Macy Grove Road. In case you're curious, utilizing the brand new road to go to the airport very early in the morning to take a family member to the airport. So notice that on the way back on the Macy Grove extension, some of those signs, maybe speed limit signs, kind of went to black. So I was wondering if, as our officers are patrolling at night or Public Services is driving, maybe they could look for signs that are owned by the NCDOT that may be hard to read because of that problem with how they were printed and the reflectivity. Okay. All right. And I hope that everyone enjoyed a very happy 4th of July and a great celebration of the 250th anniversary of the founding of our nation. So thank you, Ernie. I've heard a lot of compliments about the Parks and Rec music and fireworks and food trucks at Raiders Field, and to the Rotary Club, heard a lot of compliments about the parade. People enjoyed it, and it was very warm that day, and still a lot of people came out and enjoyed the festivities in Kernersville. So thank you to all those involved. Made it such a great day in Kernersville. Mayor Pro Tem Gorham,
No comments.
Alderman Peaker.
Just wanted to echo what Madam Mayor said. Appreciate everybody that came out and made another success of the 4th of July celebration.
And we do have upcoming the Honeybee Festival, so stay tuned for another great Kernersville event. Ernie, what's the date of that?
It's August 15th.
August 15th. So it's usually the third Saturday of August. So August 15th this year, so I hope to see everyone coming out for that. And keep an eye out. The Kernersville Museum has some special events coming up, including a First Responders Day and museum hours. So that's free admission to the Kernersville Museum. So is there anything further before the board this evening? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gorham,
Second.
second by Alderman Spanis. All in favor? It's unanimous. This meeting is now adjourned.